The sound of luggage wheels scraping against our driveway pavement cut through the cold November air. I stood at the kitchen window, coffee going cold in my hands, watching my wife of 12 years climb out of her rideshare with that particular glow people get from expensive vacations and expensive lies. Emma had been gone for 14 days, 2 full weeks, on what she called a mandatory work conference in the Bahamas. A conference so mandatory that spouses weren't permitted to attend. So critical that her phone had been conveniently unreachable for hours at a stretch. When I'd tried calling her company's main number to leave a message, the receptionist had paused just a fraction too long before saying she'd pass it along. That tiny hesitation told me everything I needed to know, but I kept my mouth shut. Not when she left, not during her absence, and not now as she walked up our front steps with that lightness in her step that guilt tries to disguise as happiness. The door swung open. "Will, God, I missed you so much," Emma said, her face lighting up. She looked incredible. Her skin had that sun-kissed bronze that definitely doesn't come from sitting in conference rooms. Her eyes were bright, rested, more alive than they'd been in months, possibly years. She was wearing a new white linen dress, breezy and expensive, the kind of thing you buy on vacation when you're trying to become a different version of yourself. She dropped her bags and moved toward me for a hug. I embraced her back, felt her arms around me, smelled the unfamiliar perfume mixing with sunscreen and something else that made my stomach churn. "How was it?" I asked, keeping my voice completely neutral, almost disinterested. "Exhausting," she replied, pulling back with an elaborate sigh. "Back-to-back sessions all day, networking dinners every single night. I barely had time to breathe, honestly. But productive. Really, really productive." I nodded slowly, took a sip of my cold coffee, watched her watching me. She was skilled at this. I had to give her that. 12 years of marriage had taught her how to read my moods, how to calibrate her lies to match my emotional temperature. But she didn't know what I knew. She couldn't know that I'd spent the last 14 days becoming a completely different person myself. The kind who checks phone records, who calls in favors from friends in unexpected places, who sits in parking lots outside office buildings waiting for truth to reveal itself. "That's great, Em, really great," I said, setting down my mug with a soft clink. "You must be exhausted. Why don't you go shower and unpack? I'll make us some lunch." Relief washed visibly across her face. "You're the absolute best. I'm disgusting from the flight." She grabbed her suitcase and headed upstairs. I listened to the familiar sounds of her moving through our house, the bedroom door opening, the suitcase being heaved onto the bed, the bathroom door closing, the shower starting. All of it so normal, so mundane, like the last 2 weeks had been exactly what she claimed they were. I pulled out my phone and looked at the photo again, the one Kyle had accidentally sent me. Kyle Morrison, her colleague, her so-called work husband, the man she'd been texting at midnight for the past 6 months, with messages that started as jokes and evolved into something else entirely. Kyle, with his easy smile and his expensive gym membership and his habit of putting his hand on the small of my wife's back during office parties. In the photo, they were sitting at a beachside restaurant at sunset. Emma was laughing at something he'd said, her hand resting on his forearm, her wedding ring catching the golden light like a small, bitter joke. They looked happy. They looked like a couple. They looked like two people who had forgotten that other people existed, that marriages mattered, that vows meant something. Kyle had sent it to me completely by accident, a group text meant for his college buddies that included my number because we'd all been friends once, back before I understood what he really was. The message that followed, "Wrong chat, man, my bad, sorry," came about 3 minutes later. Long enough for me to screenshot absolutely everything. Long enough for the truth to burn itself permanently into my mind. I deleted the photo from the message thread and put my phone away. Upstairs, the shower stopped. I heard Emma humming, actually humming some cheerful tune as she dried off, as she wrapped herself in the towel I'd washed and folded last Tuesday while she was presumably taking sunset walks with someone who wasn't her husband. About 40 minutes later, she came downstairs wearing yoga pants and one of my old college sweatshirts, her wet hair twisted up in a messy bun. She looked younger somehow, softer, like the woman I'd married all those years ago. For just a brief moment, I felt the muscle memory of love, the old instinct to protect her, to believe in her, to make excuses for the things that didn't quite add up. Then she smiled at me, and I remembered why I was doing this. "Grilled cheese?" I asked, already pulling out the bread from the cabinet. Perfect, she said, settling onto a stool at the kitchen island and pulling out her phone. Oh my God, I have like a million emails. They really worked us to the bone at this thing. I buttered the bread methodically, laid out slices of cheese on sourdough, tried to keep my hands from shaking. Did Kyle survive the whole thing? I know he was really worried about his big presentation. I said his name as casually as possible, like it meant absolutely nothing, like I didn't know what I knew. Emma glanced up from her phone, and for just the tiniest fraction of a second, something flickered behind her eyes. Fear, maybe. Guilt, definitely. Recognition that we were about to cross into territory we couldn't come back from. Kyle, she said, and her voice was almost perfect. Almost. Yeah, he did great. You know him, always overprepared for everything. I do know him, I agreed, flipping the sandwich in the pan. That's why I was surprised when I found out. Found out what? She was still scrolling, but her thumb had stopped moving across the screen. This was the moment, the cliff edge, the point where our marriage would either bend or shatter completely. I plated her sandwich, cut it diagonally the way she'd always liked, set it in front of her with a napkin and a pickle spear. Then I leaned back against the counter, crossed my arms, and asked the question I'd been rehearsing for 6 straight days. Do you know what illness he has? The color drained from her face like someone had pulled a plug. The phone slipped from her hand and clattered loudly on the marble countertop. Her mouth opened, closed, opened again. She looked at me like I'd just spoken in a completely foreign language, like the words needed time to translate into something her brain could actually process. What? It came out barely above a whisper. Kyle? I said, keeping my voice calm and clinical. The illness. I'm assuming he told you about it, given how much time you two spent together these past 2 weeks. Her hand went instinctively to her throat, an unconscious gesture of pure panic. Will, what are you talking about? It's serious, Emma. The kind of thing that doesn't just go away on its own. The kind of thing that spreads if you're not careful. I let that statement hang in the air between us, watched it sink in slowly. The kind of thing you'd want to get checked out immediately, like today, as soon as possible, really. She stood up so fast the bar stool scraped harshly against the floor. What illness, Will? What the hell are you talking about? I didn't answer directly, just looked at her with the kind of steady, knowing gaze that said everything and nothing simultaneously, that confirmed her absolute worst fears without giving her anything concrete she could deny or defend against. I need to... She grabbed her purse, her keys, her phone from the counter. I need to make a call right now. Doctor's office is probably still open for another hour or so, I said helpfully. You might want to ask for a full panel of tests, given the circumstances. She stared at me like she'd never actually seen me before, like I was some stranger wearing her husband's face. Then she turned and practically ran out the door, her sandwich sitting there, completely untouched. Her suitcase still unpacked upstairs, her elaborate lie hanging in the air like smoke. I heard her car start with a roar, heard the tires squeal as she backed out way too fast, heard the engine fade as she sped off toward town, toward the clinic, toward whatever tests she thought she needed to prove or disprove something I hadn't actually claimed. Only then did I sit down at the island. Only then did I let my hands shake. Only then did I pick up my phone and look through the other photos Kyle had accidentally sent in that group text, the ones of them at the pool together, at romantic dinners, in a hotel lobby that definitely wasn't any kind of conference center. And only then did I allow myself to smile, just a little. Because there was no illness, no disease, no medical emergency waiting to be discovered. There was only truth, weaponized with surgical precision, only fear deployed exactly where it would hurt most. Only the beginning of a revelation that would systematically tear everything down and maybe, eventually, build something else in its place. I took a bite of my own grilled cheese sandwich and pulled out the thick folder I'd been keeping hidden in my desk drawer for the past week. Inside were printed phone records showing hundreds of calls and texts between Emma and Kyle. Credit card statements highlighting charges that didn't match her claimed locations. Screenshots of deleted text messages I'd painstakingly recovered from our shared cloud backup service. A detailed timeline I'd constructed with the methodical patience of someone who'd had 14 days to become very, very good at detective work. And underneath all of that evidence, the real thing that would matter when this was finally over. But not yet. Not today. Today was purely about the fear, about letting Emma's imagination do the heavy lifting I couldn't, about planting a seed of doubt that would grow rapidly into a forest of paranoia. Today was about asking one simple question that would make her run headlong toward a truth I wasn't ready to fully reveal yet. My phone started buzzing incessantly. Text after text from Emma. At clinic. What illness? What illness? Please answer me. Will, what's going on? I set the phone face down on the counter and calmly finished eating my lunch. The rain had turned into a full storm by the time Emma's car pulled back into the driveway. 3 hours had passed since she'd rushed out. 3 hours during which my phone had collected 17 frantic text messages, 9 missed calls, and 1 voicemail that I'd listened to twice. Not for information, but to hear the tremor in her voice. The way guilt makes people sound smaller, younger, desperately alone. I was sitting in the living room when she came back in, pretending to read a book I wasn't actually reading, turning pages at intervals that suggested casual afternoon leisure, rather than calculated psychological warfare. The lamp beside me cast warm, comfortable light across the room, making everything look soft and safe and normal, creating a perfect stage for the performance we were about to give. She stood dripping in the doorway, soaked through, despite the short walk from car to house. Her hair hung in wet ropes around her face. Her eyes were bloodshot red, either from crying or from rain. I honestly couldn't tell. Maybe both. She looked fragile in a way that would have absolutely broken me just a week ago. They ran every single test they had available, she said, her voice completely hollow. Blood work, viral cultures, bacterial cultures, everything they could think of. They couldn't find anything wrong with me. Nothing at all. I looked up from my book, marked my place carefully with one finger. That's good news then, is it? She took a tentative step into the room. Will, what illness were you talking about? What did you mean? I set the book aside slowly and deliberately, let the silence stretch between us like a rubber band pulled to its absolute breaking point. I think you should sit down, Emma. I don't want to sit down. I want you to tell me what the hell is actually going on here. Sit down. Something in my tone, cold and final, made her obey immediately. She sank onto the couch across from me, pulling her wet cardigan tight around her body like it was some kind of armor. Water dripped steadily from her clothes onto our hardwood floors, making small, dark circles that spread and disappeared. There's no illness, I said quietly, calmly. The words hit her like a physical slap across the face. What? Kyle doesn't have an illness. He's perfectly fine, completely healthy as far as I know. Her face went through several different expressions in rapid succession, like watching someone flip through channels. Confusion, then relief, then anger, then back to confusion, cycling through emotions like someone desperately trying to find the right key for a lock that wouldn't open. Then why? She started to ask. Because I needed you to run, I interrupted. I needed you to panic. I needed you to feel, even for just a few hours, the kind of raw fear that makes you question absolutely everything you thought you knew. She stood up abruptly. You're completely insane. You sent me to a clinic, made me think I'd been exposed to some terrible disease, made me terrified that I'd... She stopped suddenly, realizing exactly what she'd almost said. I leaned forward in my chair. That you'd what, Emma? Caught something from Kyle? That's interesting phrasing. Why would you automatically assume you'd caught something from Kyle specifically, unless you'd been in a position to catch something from him? Unless you'd been close enough, intimate enough for that to be a legitimate concern? The color that had just returned to her face drained away completely again. We didn't. I haven't. Don't. I held up one hand firmly. Please don't insult both of us by lying right now. We're so far past that point. We're so incredibly far past that. She sank back onto the couch, and I watched her slowly realize that this conversation wasn't going remotely the way she'd expected, that she'd walked straight into something she couldn't charm or explain or rationalize her way out of. How long have you known? She whispered. Which part? I asked. That you and Kyle have been texting each other at midnight for 6 months? That you've been carefully deleting messages from your phone, but not from our shared cloud backup? That the work conference was actually a romantic couples package at the Azure Bay Resort that he booked, using his personal credit card? I paused deliberately. Or that you've been lying directly to my face every single day, asking me about my day, kissing me goodnight, making plans for our future, while you were secretly planning something completely different with someone else? Each question landed like a heavy stone thrown into still water, sending visible ripples across her face. She opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again. Finally, I can explain all of this. I don't want you to explain anything. Explanations are for misunderstandings. This wasn't a misunderstanding, Emma. This was a choice. Actually, this was dozens and dozens of choices. Every text message, every deleted conversation, every lie about working late or going to the gym or needing space, every single one was a deliberate choice you made to betray me. It wasn't supposed to happen like this. Her voice was small, breaking apart. It just evolved naturally. We were friends first. We worked together every single day. And he understood things about me that you... She trailed off. What? I turned from the window to face her directly. That I didn't understand? That I somehow failed to provide? Go ahead, Emma. Tell me how this is somehow my fault. That's not what I meant at all. Then what did you mean? Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you got bored or restless or whatever it is people get when they decide their marriage vows were more like marriage suggestions. And instead of talking to me about it, instead of fighting for us, you just... I gestured vaguely at her, at the space where our marriage used to exist. You just found someone easier. She was crying properly now, real tears streaming down her face and mixing with the rainwater. I'm sorry. God, Will, I'm so sorry, and it was stupid and selfish, and I never, ever meant to hurt you like this. But you did hurt me. You are hurting me. Every second you sit there trying to make yourself feel better with apologies that don't actually mean anything, you're hurting me. I walked to the bookshelf where I'd hidden the folder earlier, pulled it out, and set it on the coffee table between us, with a sound like a judge's gavel coming down. This is 6 months of evidence. Phone records showing hundreds of calls and texts. Credit card statements with charges that don't match your claimed locations. Security footage from your office parking garage showing you and Kyle leaving together at midnight on multiple dates when you told me you were working late. Screenshots of text messages where you called him baby, where he told you exactly what he wanted to do to you when you were finally alone together. Emma stared at the folder like it might explode. You've been spying on me this whole time? I've been protecting myself, I corrected firmly. There's a massive difference. You created this entire situation and I responded to it appropriately. Don't try to make me the villain in your story. She reached for the folder with a visibly shaking hand, opened it slowly, started flipping through the pages. I watched her face as she saw it all laid out so clearly, the complete evidence of her betrayal organized chronologically, highlighted in yellow, annotated with my handwritten notes. I'd spent 14 full days building this case with the thoroughness of a prosecutor preparing for the trial of a lifetime. What are you going to do with all of this? She asked finally, her voice barely audible. That depends entirely on you. On what? On whether you're capable of telling me the truth. The whole complete truth. Not the carefully edited version you've been rehearsing in your head during the drive home. Not the sanitized story where you minimize what actually happened and maximize my supposed failures as a husband. The actual, complete, unvarnished truth about you and Kyle. She closed the folder with shaking hands, pressed her palms flat against it like she could somehow erase what was inside through sheer force of will. We slept together. The words hung in the air between us. Even though had known for days really, hearing her actually say it out loud was different. It made it real in a way that evidence and photographs never quite could. It transformed abstract betrayal into concrete, undeniable fact. When? My voice sounded distant to my own ears, like it was coming from underwater. The first time was in July, right after the company's summer party. We'd both been drinking heavily, and he drove me home because you were out of town for that conference, and I invited him inside for coffee, and... She stopped. I don't need the play-by-play details. How many times total? She hesitated, calculating. I don't know exactly. Maybe 10 times, 12. I honestly lost count. And the Bahamas trip? We were together the entire time. It wasn't a work conference at all. There was no meeting, no sessions, no networking. We just wanted time completely alone, away from everything and everyone. I nodded slowly, methodically absorbing this information. Did you use our joint savings account to pay for your half of the trip? The account we've been carefully building for the down payment on a bigger house? Her silence told me everything I needed to know. Okay. I walked back to my chair and sat down heavily. You should pack a bag. Clothes, toiletries, whatever you need for a few days minimum. I think it's best if you stay somewhere else for a while. Will, please, this isn't negotiable, Emma. You violated our marriage in the most fundamental way possible. You lied directly to me for 6 straight months. You used our money, our shared savings, to fund your affair. And now you need to leave this house. We'll figure out all the rest of it later. But right now, tonight, I need you to not be here. She started sobbing, deep, gasping sobs that shook her entire body. I don't have anywhere to go. You have parents exactly 20 minutes away. You have friends all over the city. You have Kyle. You'll figure something out. You're clearly very good at figuring things out behind my back. I love you, she said desperately, her voice cracking. I still love you, Will. This thing with Kyle, it doesn't change how I actually feel about you. I looked at her over the top of my book. Emma, you spent the last 14 days in literal paradise with another man. You swam in the ocean with him, slept in his arms every night, woke up next to him every morning, probably planned some kind of future with him. And during all of that time, how many times did you call me? 3. 3 brief 5-minute conversations where you fed me carefully constructed lies about conference schedules and networking events. So don't sit there and tell me you love me. Don't cheapen that word, even more than you already have. 20 minutes later, she came back downstairs with a duffel bag and her laptop case. She paused at the front door, looked back at me one last time like, what happens now? Now you leave and tomorrow we start figuring out what the truth actually costs. I really am sorry, Will. I know you are. That's honestly the saddest part of all of this. I genuinely believe you're sorry. You're just not sorry enough to have not done it in the first place. The door closed behind her with a soft click. Her car started. The engine faded gradually into the distance. And then I was completely alone. Over the next few days, I systematically told everyone the truth. I called our closest friends and laid out the evidence. I went to Emma's parents' house for dinner and showed them everything, watched their faces crumble as they realized their daughter had been lying to everyone who loved her. I met with Kyle at a coffee shop and extracted a written confession, making it clear that if he didn't cooperate fully, I'd subpoena him for the divorce proceedings and make everything public record. But the real bombshell came about 2 weeks later when my private investigator finished his forensic accounting report. He'd found something I hadn't even been looking for: offshore bank accounts. Emma had been systematically hiding money from me for almost 3 years. The investigator's report was thorough and damning. Starting almost 3 years ago, Emma had been making small transfers from our joint accounts into accounts I didn't know existed. It started with just $100 here, $200 there, amounts small enough that I'd never notice. But over time, it had escalated dramatically. According to the forensic analysis, she'd hidden approximately $127,000 from our marital estate. Money that should have been ours, that she'd been secretly siphoning away while planning her exit strategy. When I confronted Emma with this evidence, when I showed her the bank statements and transfer records and threatened to file criminal charges for fraud and asset concealment, she finally broke completely. The woman who'd been so composed, so skilled at lying, just fell apart. She signed an amended divorce agreement giving me 70% of all our assets. She agreed to return every dollar of the hidden money plus penalties. She accepted 0 alimony, made no claims on my retirement accounts, agreed to a completely uncontested property division. But there was one more revelation I'd been sitting on. One more betrayal that cut even deeper than the affair itself. The day Emma came to pick up the last of her belongings, I asked her to bring something specific: her birth control pills. Why? She asked over the phone, clearly confused. You'll see. Just bring them. When she arrived with her boxes, I sat her down at the dining room table one final time. I pulled out her pill packet and examined it slowly, deliberately. These pills are from Dr. Harrison's office, right? Your gynecologist? Yes. Will, what does this have to do with anything? I slid a stack of medical records across the table toward her. These pills you've been taking religiously for the past year, they're not to regulate your cycle like you told me. They're standard oral contraceptives. Birth control. The kind specifically designed to prevent pregnancy. She went completely white. No, that's wrong. Dr. Harrison said these would help us get pregnant. She said they would regulate my hormones so we could conceive. Dr. Harrison prescribed these 5 years ago as standard birth control, I said calmly. You told me she prescribed them to help regulate your cycle. That was the first major lie. I pointed to another document in the stack. This is an email exchange between you and Dr. Harrison from 3 months ago. You asked her to continue your prescription. She specifically reminded you that if you were still trying to conceive, you should stop taking them immediately. You told her you'd think about it. But you never stopped, did you? Emma was openly crying now, tears streaming down her face. Will, please? For an entire year, Emma. For one full year, I genuinely thought we were trying to have a baby together. I went to every fertility appointment with you. I changed my entire diet, stopped drinking alcohol completely, started taking vitamins and supplements that the doctors recommended. I held you while you cried about negative pregnancy tests. I reassured you over and over that it would happen eventually, that we just needed to be patient. And the entire damn time, you were taking pills specifically designed to make sure that it never, ever happened. She was sobbing uncontrollably now, her whole body shaking. I wasn't ready. I thought I was when we first started talking about children. But when it became real, when it stopped being abstract, I panicked. I realized I didn't actually want a baby. Not yet. Maybe not ever. But I knew how badly you wanted one, and I didn't know how to tell you I'd changed my mind. So, instead of having an honest conversation with me, instead of respecting me enough to tell me the truth about something so fundamental to our future, you just lied. You let me believe we had fertility problems. You went to doctor's appointments and nodded along sympathetically while they discussed expensive treatments, all while taking pills that made those treatments completely impossible. The full weight of her deception settled over both of us like a heavy blanket. The affair with Kyle, the hidden offshore accounts totaling over $100,000, the fake fertility struggles while she actively prevented conception. All of it finally revealed, laid bare, undeniable. We eventually settled the divorce completely. Emma returned all the hidden money as agreed, accepted the 70-30 asset split without further argument. She also lost her job when the HR department at her company investigated the affair and discovered she and Kyle had been falsifying timesheets, billing personal time as client work, which constituted fraud. Kyle got fired too and ended up moving to Seattle to start over. Emma moved back in with her parents and started working temp jobs while trying to rebuild her professional reputation. 3 months after the divorce was officially finalized, I received an email from Emma. It was a long, raw apology, probably the most honest thing she'd ever said to me. She acknowledged everything she'd done, admitted to the manipulation and systematic deception, took full responsibility for the calculated nature of her betrayal. She wrote about being in therapy, about trying to become a better person, about understanding now how deeply she'd hurt me. I read that email 3 times, looking for hidden manipulation or ulterior motives. But it just seemed genuine, honest. The first truly honest communication she'd sent me in years. I thought about responding, crafted several different replies in my head, but in the end, I just closed the email without answering. Because sorry doesn't fix anything. It doesn't undo the betrayal, doesn't restore broken trust, doesn't erase the year I spent trying to conceive a child she was actively preventing. It was just words arriving far too late to actually matter. Now, 6 months after everything fell apart, people still ask me if I regret how I handled it. The psychological warfare, the fake illness question, the systematic exposure of her affair to everyone we knew, the financial investigation that uncovered her hidden accounts, the way I methodically dismantled her life piece by piece as payment for how she'd dismantled mine, and I honestly don't know if I regret it. I know I was hurt, deeply and fundamentally wounded in ways I'm still processing. I know I responded to that hurt with calculated precision, with carefully gathered evidence and strategic timing and deliberately deployed truths. Some people think I went too far, that I was vindictive and cruel. But here's what I also know. Emma made choices. Hundreds of them. Every late-night text to Kyle, every lie she told me, every dollar she secretly transferred, every birth control pill she swallowed while crying to me about negative pregnancy tests. Those were all conscious choices she made, and I made a choice too. I chose truth over comfortable lies. I chose consequences over quiet enabling. I chose to make absolutely certain that when everything was over, Everyone would know exactly what had really happened. Not Emma's sanitized version where she'd somehow paint herself as a sufferer of a distant, neglectful husband. Not Kyle's version where he was just a nice guy who fell in love with someone who happened to be married. The actual, documented, undeniable truth. Maybe that makes me vindictive. Maybe it makes me cruel. Or maybe it just makes me someone who refused to let his pain be invisible, who insisted that betrayal carry an actual cost. I'm healing now, slowly but steadily. I've started dating again, very cautiously. I've learned to trust again, though much more carefully than before. I've rebuilt my life into something that looks completely different from what I imagined at 22 when I got married. But maybe it's better in ways I couldn't have predicted back then. Emma reached out again a couple months ago, asking if we could meet and talk. I declined politely but firmly. Not because I hate her, I really don't anymore. But because there's genuinely nothing left to say. She made her choices. I made mine. We both have to live with the consequences of those choices now. And I'm slowly learning that's okay. That you can survive betrayal. That you can rebuild after devastation. That you can be broken apart and put yourself back together into something different. Maybe even something stronger. The question about the illness still haunts me sometimes late at night. The look of pure panic on Emma's face when I asked it. The fear I deliberately caused. The cruelty of making her rush to a doctor for a disease that didn't actually exist. Was that justice or just revenge dressed up in nicer clothes? I'm genuinely not sure I'll ever know the answer to that question. What I do know is that in that specific moment, I desperately needed her to feel a fraction of what I was feeling. The fear, the uncertainty, the sick dread of knowing something terrible had happened without knowing exactly how bad it would get. I needed her to understand viscerally, not just intellectually, what betrayal actually feels like. Did it make me feel better? Not really, not in any lasting way. Did it make things worse? Possibly. But it accomplished one thing very clearly. It demonstrated that actions have consequences, that choices carry real weight, that you can't just betray someone completely and expect them to quietly accept it. I'm not proud of everything I did during those months, but I'm not ashamed either. I survived. I'm still here. I'm okay, or at least I'm getting there. And that, in the end, is what actually matters.